Okay, it'd be good to start with a little bit of background on Portus Data Centers, just sort of how long the company's been around, any sort of key milestones to date. Yeah.
Sure. So we started thinking about the regional data center strategy that we've put together probably back in 2020, 2021. It took a little bit longer to come to fruition because of COVID, but we actually acquired our first business, our first kind of leg of the business, if you like, early of 2023 with the acquisition of European Data Hub in Luxembourg. Which is a fully fledged tier 4 data center in the city of Luxembourg. Since we acquired a business in Munich, as well as IPHH, a data center business up in the north of Germany in Hamburg.
Okay, and in terms of, I know we're talking partly today because you've announced expansions, and we'll get onto that in a minute. But what's your existing footprint at the IPHH in Hamburg? What's already there in terms of size, capacity, all that kind of stuff?
So we have two data centers in Hamburg today, both on the Wendenstrasse, which is the street in Hamburg where all the networks kind of run along on both sides of the street. So we're sitting on top of the networks, which is a very kind of good community that we have in both of our data centers. They're relatively small, in total about 2.5 megawatts of capacity that we have today. And we're looking to scale up the business with the acquisition by building a slightly larger data center right next door.
Okay, yeah, because I say you're expanding. So, I mean, the reason for the expansion, presumably it's good because lots of people want to use it. But is it very much the local business that you're attracting, or is it further afield that Hamburg is a useful site for people to just what is fueling the expansion, I guess?
It's actually both. It's actually both. You know, when you look at Hamburg, Hamburg is this, and the area around Hamburg is a very high GDP area. So there's an awful lot of economic activity in the north of Germany, all centered in the city of Hamburg. So there's good, strong local demands, and as we highlighted, we are starting to see more local regional demand than before. Up until a couple of years ago, most data center demand was concentrated in the big cities, in Frankfurt, in London, in Amsterdam, and Paris. But since a couple of years, we're starting to see demand for regional locations grow under pressure of demand from local enterprise and local organizations that don't necessarily need to put all of their infrastructure far away. They want it closer to home. In addition, because of the density of GDP in the Hamburg area, is also very much a concentration point of networks. And like I said, we're sitting on top of those networks with our data centers in the area where we are in Hamburg. So we have a very strong community of networks, IP providers, content distribution networks, hyperscalers that put their own kind of network pops in to serve all of their customers in the area.
Yeah, and in terms, I mean, I think you mentioned at the start of the interview other data centers you have, but just be good to remind us or explain, because I think Portus, you say you have a regional data center aggregation strategy, I think is the sort of the official title of what you're doing. So it'd be good to understand what that is, and is it acquisition purely, or are you going to build and open your data? Just what is the strategy?
So the strategy starts, I think, with demand, with customers. You know, what do customers need? And so far, a lot of the data centers concentrated in those kind of small areas, those big cities like Frankfurt, Amsterdam, London, Paris. This was the result of a concentration on networks back in the day when the sector started to appear, maybe 20, 25 years ago. We're now starting to see less of those constraints. Networks are far denser than they used to be. For example, in Hamburg, there's a really kind of strong connectivity point for all of the north of Germany. So any enterprise or organization that lives in the area doesn't need to go to Frankfurt in order to get connectivity. They can all get that locally. So there's more demand driving into the regional areas, particularly in Germany, because GDP is so distributed across the country compared to some of the other countries. So this is why we're very much focusing on regional areas. We're almost actively avoiding Frankfurt and Amsterdam and London and Paris. This is why we are in Hamburg, in Munich, in Luxembourg, and we're eyeing a number of other cities as well. So in terms of the aggregation strategy, we want to do both. We want to do buy and we want to do build. So in those three locations that we have today, Hamburg, we're expanding. We acquired land and power right next to our existing site. In Munich, we already have land and power next to our existing site, and we're actually kicking off the project to expand the data center there as well. And in Luxembourg, we are already going through an expansion project as we speak, enhancing the capacity with probably about 50%. In addition, we also want additional locations, and we're actively working on a number of opportunities, both in Germany as well as in some of the surrounding countries, to add a number of city locations to our footprint.
Okay, I'm sure a lot of it's not for public consumption, but you say obviously Germany is the, if you like, the sweet spot, and then is it sort of neighbouring countries, or will you look anywhere within Europe? Just anything you can tell us about where you might be looking to expand.
No, this is part of our kind of public strategy. We're very much focusing on Germany. That's where our center of gravity is. Surrounding countries are very much in play. Literally all of the surrounding countries: Austria, Switzerland, Belgium, Luxembourg, where we already are, Netherlands, Nordics. We may go further afield a little bit if there's opportunities that kind of come along. You probably won't be finding us, excuse me, you won't be finding us expanding into Spain, Portugal, Italy, or further to the east. That's out of our scope. We do want to make sure that we focus, so we can build a cohesive, proper business and deliver really good service to our customers rather than spread ourselves too thin.
And in terms of the type of services, the type of data center you're offering, what would you say? Because it's quite a competitive market, although I know there's kind of room for everyone as well. But what are the USPs? What is it particularly that you're focusing on to attract people to your facilities?
First of all, we're building much smaller than where we see most of the money in the industry go, into those hyperscale developments, 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe even 100 megawatt data centers. We're building typically around 3 to 6 megawatts, sometimes a little bit bigger, but that's kind of the average size of data center that we would build. Clearly, we'll build to standards, concurrently maintainable, tier 3 type kind of standard, 5 nines type availability. I think that's pretty much industry standard. Then the two core pillars of our service offering are one around the connectivity options for all of the regional customers. And second is about being close to where we're looking for our customers, where our customers need capacity. So when you think about the customers that we want to address, or the verticals, you think about local government, you think about kind of local healthcare institutions, local research, local education, but also when you think about hybrid cloud, where enterprises are starting to repatriate workloads from the public cloud into their own control, because public cloud turns out to be expensive. And only if you need the flexibility of a public cloud, it makes sense. But if you have kind of standard, predictable, stable workloads, you're actually better off taking them into your own control. But then when you do that, you're going to be looking for a home much closer to where you are. So if you're a business in Munich, you're not going to put your own kind of on-prem IT infrastructure in Frankfurt. You're probably going to be putting that in a co-location center in Munich. Same goes for Luxembourg, Hamburg, and the other cities that we're looking at.
And I've noticed so we haven't used the word edge yet, and I know it's different people have different descriptions. You're talking regional, and I understand from what you've explained that a lot of what you're doing is therefore supplying the data center capacity to local companies. So I get that, but are you also potentially looking to give, I don't know, content providers more local access to people? With the idea that a lot of people are looking to push out to more local data centers to give people a better service for whatever it is they're delivering. Is that part of your strategy, or is it much more about just serving the local communities where your data centers are?
It kind of talks to where the delineation is between edge and regional, and I don't think there's any one definition. For example, when Akamai has launched a project called Gecko, which is in essence putting compute and AI type workloads much closer to end users. Now, clearly, Akamai, as a content distribution network, they already have a very kind of dense network because they want to be close to their end users in any case. These are workloads that are, I guess they're edge-like, but they're still a couple hundred kilowatts each. So they will go into larger edge data centers, which, whether we're a regional data center operator or a larger edge data center operator, I really don't know where the difference is. And I think we're both. So we are looking for those kind of workloads as well. What we're not doing is pursuing kind of micro type locations with only a couple hundred kilowatts. Even further and closer to eyeballs. That's not what we're doing. Data centers that we design and build and operate are going to be at least kind of 2-3 megawatts.
Yeah, and a couple more questions before we finish. One about, I guess, sustainability, which the industry is clearly getting to grips with. Just your thoughts as to yourselves as a company and customers. I'm just interested, are customers asking you for your sustainability credentials, and how important is it for you, when you're either acquiring a data center or, planning to build out? Is sustainability very much sort of front and center of your plans?
It is. It is important to us. It's important to our investors. It's important to our customers. In addition, there's a new law in Germany, the energy efficiency law, which is going to push us along whether we want that or not as data center operators, because there has very, very stringent energy efficiency requirements built in. So it's going to be, or it is, I should say, front and center of how we design our data centers today, our new data centers. We have put in place already a couple of programs to make sure that our existing sites will get to the required level. And this is all about making them as efficient as possible. And yes, clearly, when we look at acquisitions, we need to be able to modify them such or refurbish them such that we can make them as efficiently as possible. So when we're looking at all the data centers that just don't have the capability, or making them more efficient would be hugely and prohibitively expensive, we're not doing it. Because there's quite a lot of older data centers made available from telcos, from enterprises, but only a small subset of those actually have viability going forward. A lot of them are just too old and too rigid. Overhauling those would be just too expensive.
And I guess the other thing, I think you alluded to it when you mentioned Akamai an answer or two back, but AI, we can't ignore that. It's everywhere, and it's going to be huge and take over the world, etc. But just your thoughts as to the impact, because again, it depends who you talk to. It may be having a massive impact, or maybe not quite such a big impact. Just your thoughts maybe as to what impact you think it might have on the industry and yourselves, in terms of, are you looking to build out high performance compute type facilities at some stage, or do you already have that capacity? Just your thoughts on AI.
Yeah, AI is all the rage nowadays. It's already having an impact. Let's kind of put that out there as a fact. Particularly the hyperscalers are deploying very, very large capitals to build AI infrastructures, particularly the large language models that they're putting out there. So there's already a lot of demand for data center operators to build AI ready type data centers. When you think about the impact it has on the industry, the workloads, the AI workloads are typically very high power density. So some of them are maybe 15-20 kilowatts a rack, which you can probably still do with reasonably traditional cooling methodologies. However, as soon as you go to maybe 30, 40, 50 kilowatts a rack, you need to think about liquid cooling type solutions, or whether it's cooling to the chip or immersion cooling, or there's a whole bunch of technology out there. And a lot of the existing, particularly hyperscale data centers, are not capable of delivering this. So it will have a profound impact on how we design our data centers going forward, both from a cooling perspective as well as from a footprint perspective. Because by densifying these racks so much, you also need smaller footprints to deliver the same kind of capacity. Now, the impact for us as a regional/edge operator is slightly different. we don't expect to see significant concentrations of these kind of workloads in the regions or on the edge. We will see them. We're already seeing some of these. Akamai is a good example. It's kind of an AI type workload, but we don't expect to see them in large concentrations. So we will see typically a healthy mix of kind of normal density combined with maybe a couple of AI racks to deliver AI inference or some kind of local AI application that needs to be on the edge. But it won't be significant concentration. So in order to accommodate these workloads, it's going to be a little bit easier for us on the edge, in the regions, rather than in the central locations, I expect.
And I promise this is the final one because you give me a lot of time and I keep saying only a couple more questions. But in terms of the skills situation for the industry, I'd be fascinated on your take because everyone you talk to says, yeah, we're heading towards a problem because there's fairly mature individuals, shall we say, running the data center space and not enough young blood coming in. But nobody seems to be panicking yet. And yet if the predictions are correct, I don't know, in 5 years' time or so, there's going to be a massive gap in skills experience. So just your thoughts, is this an impending crisis, and is the industry awake to what needs to be done, or do you think the moment various folks are maybe sleepwalking towards the fact that in 5 years' time they just may not have enough people to run their data center, or is AI going to run the data center so it doesn't matter? I don't know. Your thoughts.
So it's on two levels, right? It's on the kind of the senior executive level, where I think we still have quite a bit of longevity. On the people that actually run those data centers, there is a bit of an impending crisis. I do think, though, AI is actually it's a technology that will impact on our data centers. It's also a technology that we will start to use. If you pull this a little bit wider, Western societies are suffering from a lack of skilled personnel across the board. It's not just our sector, it's literally across the board in most kind of Western countries. And the only way to resolve this problem is by increasing our productivity. AI is going to help us increase productivity across the piece. And certainly in infrastructures like we have in our data centers that are highly automated by now, AI is going to help us manage these by more complex and more kind of intense monitoring, by pattern recognition, predictive maintenance. Those kind of things will reduce the workload on people, but still maintain a really, really strong level of service.
Okay, so overall, you're, without putting words into your mouth, you're fairly optimistic that the various, whether it's sustainability, skills, AI, the industry is reasonably well positioned to cope with whatever's going to hit it in the next couple of years. Yeah,
I think so. Although the fact that we as an industry are taking way more than our proportional share of energy infrastructure, that's a different problem that we face as an industry, and I think that's not so easy to resolve. Simply because these energy infrastructures, they're under pressure today, and it just takes an awful long time to strengthen them, to build them out. So this is going to have an impact on the growth of the industry, which is going to have an impact on how IT is going to be used by both enterprises as well as consumers. Because at the end of the day, we're not kind of an insular industry. All we do is serve enterprises and people out there that want to use their IT infrastructure. We just house it. So if our industry is constrained in its growth because of, for example, energy infrastructures, that will have an impact on how quickly, for example, AI developments can go. Because particularly AI is very, very power hungry. So there's no easy solution. There's just no easy solution because the energy infrastructure takes time to build. It's very difficult to do that quicker than they're already doing today.
Yeah, and presumably part of the reason a lot of it's outside of the data center industry's control. You're relying on governments to come up with policies and build out or reinforce the existing infrastructure. So it must be a bit frustrating.
Well, you know, a lot like everything, it also offers opportunities. It is also one of the drivers for growing demand in the regions, simply because the central locations like Frankfurt, they are just so constrained on power that demand is kind of automatically like a waterbed, you know, it's just kind of moved out. You now see Berlin springing up as a location where there's huge demand, and the development pipeline for Berlin is great. You know, it is really significant. Partly because there's a lot of GDP there. There's a lot of organizations in the Berlin area, but also because Frankfurt is just becoming too constrained, too busy. So operators are looking for a different location to put their expansion to.
Okay, Adrian, I really enjoyed the chat. We covered quite a lot of ground and you give some great insights and information as to what's going on both at Portus and the industry more widely. So really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.